As a former competitive runner and triathlete, Heather Katz has always been passionate about fitness, health, and wellness. This passion led her to become a certified health coach, personal trainer, and fitness instructor. She specializes in using a holistic approach to help individuals and families improve their health in simple steps, making good health, fitness, balanced living, and nutrition practical and doable. Welcome, Heather. I'm so excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Jasmine, for having me. I'm really looking forward to our
Yes.
conversation.
It's a long time coming, right? So,
That's
all
okay.
right. So Heather, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Jasmine, I'm a mom of 3,
Mm-hmm.
and I stayed at home with our kids for over 16 years. Prior
Okay.
to that, I was an elementary school teacher. But during those years that I was home, it became pretty clear to me that I hadn't really followed my true passion, or maybe what my passion evolved into as a person, as a career.
Mm-hmm.
So when our youngest went to kindergarten, I became a certified health coach and
Okay.
then started health coaching part-time, added a personal training certification this past summer. And
Congrats.
yes, that was exciting, and became a certified yoga teacher and personal trainer and health coach at a local YMCA. I
Okay.
also have an online side of my business,
Uh-huh.
and you have been enjoying, connecting with online communities and building my business that way as well,
Very
helping as many
nice.
people as I can.
Very nice, very nice. So you started out as an elementary school teacher and then eventually transitioned over to the health coach side. So we're oftentimes I find that, when it's our passion to do something, it's always kind of in the back of our mind and we're constantly introducing it into our daily lives wherever it may be in a different kind of way. Did you notice if maybe when you were a teacher, you also incorporated a lot of different healthy tips, healthy tactics for the children?
Well, definitely when I was pregnant with our oldest, he's now 17, I was teaching 5th grade, and we had to have snack time because when you're pregnant, you need snack in the middle of the morning. And the kids, I just watched what they ate. And as I watched them, you could see the patterns. And I said to them, just as an encouragement, I said, I can't tell you what you have to bring to school, but if you're going to bring Snickers one day, let that be your one day for the week, and bring some healthier things. So it was guiding, and it was
Yeah.
suggesting, and they'd watch me eat what I had, and it was never any sort of requirement, but it was neat to watch how just kind of that process of like a parent being there and saying, I suggest you might try this. They would take on those choices, and they'd say, oh, Mrs. Katz, I had
Uh-huh.
this in my snack today because you wanted me to bring something healthy today. So that was just neat to see that trickle down.
Okay.
Yes, so that would be, certainly one example. And, just as a mom, I also, incorporate a lot of healthy eating into what I do with our children.
Mm-hmm.
But later I transitioned into outdoor play-based learning classes with kids. So
Okay.
the movement piece, the being outside,
Yeah.
that part of teaching was really what I wanted to do more than being in the classroom. Even though I love the classroom part, I brought that into my teaching, which I still do. It's online right now,
Mm-hmm.
but having the movement and the outside time was a priority for me as a teacher as well.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you always know, like, was it always a part of your lifestyle to have healthier choices, whether it's eating or activity wise, or was there an aha moment for you?
I think the answer is it was always a part of my
Mm-hmm.
life because I was fortunate enough to be raised by a doctor and a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was a cardiologist. He's
Okay.
retired now. So cardiologists, especially in the 80s, were very much focused on eating as a necessity for heart health, for body health.
Uh-huh.
And so my parents really incorporated that into our growing up. And plus my mom had a huge garden, and we lived in Oregon where there's produce, fresh produce everywhere. So it
Mm-hmm.
really was a part of who we are. We also are a family that we hiked and biked and skied, and we're
Yeah.
always outdoors. It's another thing about just being in a beautiful place like Oregon. That's kind of what everybody does. So
Uh-huh.
I think it was a part of my upbringing,
Yeah.
And so I kind of naturally fell into being an athlete and, working out, and kind of went on from there in terms of my experiences as an athlete.
Okay. Okay. So, what was the pivotal moment for you then to transition from being a teacher to being a certified health coach? What was the pivotal moment that you finally said, "This is it's time for me to move on"?
Right. I think it was in the works in my mind when I was home with our youngest,
Mhm.
because I had him at more of an older age. I was 40 when I had him. And so when you
Okay.
have a child at age 40, you kind of look at things a little bit differently. You can approach your life a little bit differently, approach motherhood a little bit differently, because you have a lot going on and you're in a different stage of your life. So I did things, kind of from a more what was true to myself perspective,
Mhm.
with him as a mother. And then I started to realize, well, I'm not really being as true to myself in my career as well.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I transitioned back, became a reading teacher. I went back into the classroom, was there for a year and a half plus.
Uh-huh.
Loved interacting with the kids, but I just, my heart wasn't in the classroom. It just
Right.
wasn't there. And so that was the moment where I said, I can't keep fooling myself. I love kids, and I'll always work with kids in some capacity. And I'm thankful that I had this as part of my path, but I've really got to follow my passion and switch gears.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Um, so what is your why, Heather?
Oh, probably a multifaceted why,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest why has to be kind of where I started when I was recovering from the pregnancy of my third
Okay.
child. I had always been an athlete. It had always been easy to get back in shape, after child one and child two. But when you're 40, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And I was faced, probably for the first time in my life, with, I can't quite lose this weight. I don't have enough time to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
How do I fit in this healthy lifestyle and living with three kids, with everything going on? And so, because, thankfully I have the background as, somebody who was an athlete. I was competitive runner for many years. I became a competitive triathlete at the national level. So it was really a part of who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Motherhood shifted that, and it just became, it became an accoutrement to life, as in, I exercised because it made me feel good, and it helped me to, be who I wanted to be. But at age 40, losing that weight wasn't working. I thought I was doing everything right. And so I had to go back to the drawing board and kind of redesign how I
Mm-hmm.
exercised, how I ate, how it would work into my life as a mom. And so that drives my why, because I know how to do these things. I know that I not only guided myself, but I've helped friends and family
Mm-hmm.
members who have been in these similar situations. And I just knew in my heart that I could help many, many others. And that's really, I think,
Okay.
the driving force.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So with all things, this is going to be aired in 2021. However, I'm sure coronavirus and COVID-19, all that, all things global pandemic will still exist a month or two from now. Although I'm very excited about the vaccination and everything moving forward. But what are some of your recommendations? There's so many homebodies now. There's work from home, there's school from home. What can we do? I feel like either people have taken there's two extremes. People have really taken the more active lifestyle because they're taking advantage of the downtime, and others are really just falling into this pit of eat because I'm so bored, or you know depression, even with being socially distanced from everybody. What are some of your suggestions?
Right. Yes, all of those things are true. I think that comfort foods are on the rise in terms of what people are eating,
Hmm.
and as are, of course, YouTube videos, subscriptions for workouts. Those are all on the rise as well. My biggest recommendation, and it kind of is a, back to basics recommendation for me. Now,
Hmm.
this depends on where you live, but I feel very strongly that getting outside, if that's something that you can do,
Hmm.
is so important. Getting that vitamin D, getting the fresh air, being in nature. We have, a tendency, we're in front of our screens either as a student or as a professional or as whatever we're doing, we're in front of a
Mhm.
screen, and we get a little bit of that nature deficit. And even 5 minutes
Mm.
outside, even if it's by a window, even if it's on a porch, getting yourself outside in that fresh air and that sunlight boosts so many things in our health. And we could talk forever about immune
Mhm.
system if we really wanted to, but that alone is just going to improve your mindset and your immune system. And you know of course the vitamin D right there is wonderful for your body.
Mhm.
But when it comes to falling into the patterns of eating the comfort
Yeah.
foods or eating and not exercising, if you just get outside, once you're out there, maybe there's a trail that you forgot that you like to walk, or some Christmas lights that you want to go see, or you have a
Mhm.
dog that just wants to get outside and you've
Yeah.
been neglecting them because gosh, the couch is really comfortable too and they like to snuggle on your lap. So it just getting started and doing something a little bit different. If you
Okay.
can't get outside, my biggest recommendation is go back to when you were younger and what did you love to do when you were,
Mhm.
it could be when you were a child, when you were in high school, when you were in college. What did you love to do? And let that be what you start with.
Yeah.
Maybe you kindle an old sport, or find an activity that you enjoy, but just find something you like and do it for 10 minutes and see how it feels.
Right, right. What about mindless eating? What are some of your tips for that?
I think biggest tip for that is hydration,
Okay.
and just making sure you've got a big glass of water. Infused waters are great if it's simple as putting a slice of lemon in it, just getting a little
Mhm.
bit of something in it. Uh, and mindless eating can be replaced with mindfulness about what we're doing. So,
Mhm.
if we have a little bit of extra time and we're at home, then
Mhm.
maybe, chunk your day a little bit in your mind and say, okay, so this will be my breakfast. And then the next chunk of my day is going to be so and so many hours of work time, maybe take a walk break, chunk your day so that you're planning out those eating times and they're not just trickling into every part of your day.
Mhm.
I think that's helpful. Is yeah, it's great to have, 5 small meals a day or 3 meals, a couple snacks, whatever it is that works for you. But
Yeah.
let it be a little bit more structured if you find it to be something that is mindless.
Okay. Okay. So, what advice do you have for those who are, there's a lot of downtime, so we're doing a lot of our own little research here and there, and we're hearing about a lot of different types of fad diets. It's always been around prior to global pandemic, but I feel like maybe now more than ever, people have more opportunities to look into it, and they're trying more different things. And I'm seeing friends left and right post about low carb or vegetarian, vegan. So, what are
Right.
some of your advice about food choices and the fad diets that people are attempting out there?
Well, I think that just like the word fad, that
Mhm.
has to be something that you're careful about when you are starting it. That being said, I am all for finding something that works for you as a person, because
Okay.
I can come to you as a health coach and as somebody who lives a healthy lifestyle and say, well, this is what works for me. But Jasmine, you could tell me, I've tried that and it didn't work for me, or it
Mhm.
didn't, that didn't incorporate the foods that I love, or I found it to be too limiting. So if there is something that you can latch onto that gets you started in the right direction, I'm all for it.
Mhm.
My recommendation for anyone in that position is always come back to nutrition. So, vegetarian has been around, of course, for eons. And,
Yeah.
that is, we know that we can replace animal-based protein sources with plant-based
Mhm.
protein sources. But if you look at some of the other fad diets, there may be an emphasis on too much protein, not enough fruits and vegetables,
Mhm.
or an emphasis on foods that are more difficult to get, more expensive, not as friendly if you are actually, trying to be on the go or have it be family friendly. So whatever you're going to latch onto, if it's going to help you to move in the direction of healthfulness,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. But if it's a fad that is having you do odd things to follow that diet and that prescription, or eat in ways that is, maybe not how you might have filled up your plate as a child. Or I kind of go back to how we eat as children, because they say
Mm.
children intuitively, as long as you present to them the good foods, they're going to intuitively choose what would be healthy for them. If you present the fruits and veggies, you prevent the
Hmm.
proteins, they'll choose and they'll fill their day
Yeah.
with those foods. So just get back to, the basics of what is healthy, what constitutes, a balanced plate of food
Okay.
in all of your eating, even if you're incorporating some fad diets.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that, Heather. I'm hearing a lot of back to basics and, just going back to what we used to do that once worked for us. So you mentioned going back to basics with your active lifestyle, going back to what you did as a child and you enjoyed doing, and just bringing that back into incorporating it into your life now. And then you've also mentioned back to basics with food choices. What did you used to actually what did mom and dad used to say must be on your plate, and you had to eat before you can have that slice of dessert. And so I really enjoy that, because I think sometimes incorporating these simple terms that's very understandable for each person, however their perspective is of what basic was for them, is really helpful too. Sometimes you don't have to over glorify and seek out these different types of food specifics to make your new lifestyle work for you, to follow these fad trends. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure.
So what are some top suggestions for someone who is looking to begin with the improvement of their health and fitness?
I think it starts with your goals.
Hmm.
So if you want to improve your health and fitness, what are your goals? Get those at least in your mind. I'm big into writing them down,
Hmm.
but starting with, what your focus wants to be, because I can come to you as a personal trainer and say, well, this is a great workout. I want you to start doing this. But if your goals are not to, get strong shoulders and arms, then that's not going to be a great workout for you.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to start with their goals.
Okay.
And then when it comes to, if you are just getting started, if you haven't exercised in years, if you haven't ever exercised before, I always like to incorporate micro workouts, because I think it's hard to say, okay, I need to go to the gym for an hour and a half, 3 days a week. Well, what if you can't go to the gym where you are right now? We're currently in the pandemic. What if you don't have the time to do that? What
Hmm.
if that's not what you want to do? That's not the type of workout you like. Well, so then I suggest a micro workout. So it can be as simple, like we talked about before, getting outside, going on a walk. It can be as simple as, finding a way to take those stretch breaks during your day, so you're getting some steps, walking around your house a couple of times when you're,
Hmm.
in a break at your work time, and incorporating that into your day. And I say 3 times a day because we eat 3 meals a day, so it's good to take those breaks. So can you
Hmm.
do 10 minutes in the morning before your work time or at your morning break? Can you do 10 minutes at noontime?
Yeah.
And then 10 minutes in the evening? And you might find that the evening time, you bring your kids into it, you bring your spouse or your partner into it,
Hmm.
and you might end up finding that it's a 20-minute to, 45-minute time where you're outside, or you're, you know, putting on some music and dancing, something to just get everybody moving and realizing how fun it is. And then quickly you forget
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're exercising. When it comes to the eating piece, because of course,
Hmm.
health requires movement and healthy eating.
Hmm.
I think that less pressure is good. I mentioned goals at the beginning. Starting with one thing that you're going to work on this week
Hmm.
and keeping it that simple. Maybe two
Mm.
things, but it takes 21 days plus to make a habit. So
Yeah.
if you're going to take on, I need to cut out sugar and I need to eat more fruits and vegetables and, then it's going to be overwhelming to you, and you're not going
Hmm.
to, you're less likely to stick with it. I'm not saying you're not going to, because there are very, very determined people out there who can,
Yeah.
but pick one thing that you want to start this week
Okay.
and add that. And then once that becomes habitual or a little bit more part of your daily life, then add something else. And what would that next thing be?
Uh-huh. Okay. No, that's great advice. I'm kind of like sitting here writing notes. I'm like, wow, one thing, instead of having a grand scheme and just piling it all in. All right, tomorrow it starts, and then I have this coming at me. You're right. I think incorporating things slowly, and making that work. And I worked with a different coach, and And she had mentioned to me that, starting off with just doing 15 minutes a day, just give me 15 minutes a day. And that was her thing for the first 2 weeks when we worked on mindset. And she said, if you can give me 15 minutes a day, then eventually I can get you to do that 30-minute workout a day. And then, so like she said, just get up and move, whether it's just walking the dog or just making smarter choices with taking stairs instead of elevators, those little things. She says, just give me 15 minutes. If you can do that for me, it'll be much easier for us 2 weeks from now to incorporate. And so essentially, that's great advice. So thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
so, what about suggestions for those of us who are just too busy to find times towards being healthier? I know that's a perfect excuse for me. I just graduated from my doctorate program, and that was always a good excuse. I'm too busy with homework. I'm busy growing with my education, growing with my career, doing my little side hustle with Comfort Kills. Back burner, like my health and fitness was always on the back burner. It always just sat there and it stayed there because to me that's being vain. I'm not interested in how I look necessarily as much as how smart I get, or and so it was a great excuse. And I think that's something I learned about myself this year, was just the excuses I made for myself just to avoid having to ultimately be very as fit and as healthy as I can be. So what advice
Right.
do you have for people like me?
I would have to go back to some of the things that I had to learn with adding a third child to our life when we already had, at that time, we had a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So
Yeah.
they were on the go. We had a very busy schedule already. Then you add a baby to that. And I really had to be creative. So a lot of what I did, of course, the dogs got me out walking and that was great. So a lot of that was naturally part of the day, but we lose muscle as we age. And so
Mhm.
for me, I knew that I needed to be strong to keep up with, the sports. I coached the kids in sports. I needed to
Mm,
be healthy and strong to keep up with them. So I had to find a way to fit in some strength training. And it often was done either with a baby in the front pack or carrying the groceries in from the garage. I mean, the kids would laugh at me, but I'd be carrying grocery bags doing bicep curls or lunges to bring them into the house,
mhm.
because it's amazing how many lunges you can get in if you're walking, from your car. Maybe park your car at the top of your driveway if if
Yeah.
it's too close, and get some lunges in, or even just carry them mindfully, that your body is, engaging those muscles as you're carrying them to the house, because we can gauge our scapulas and our shoulders, and
Mm,
use them as we bring in the groceries. So finding little ways. I often encourage. I teach yoga classes, as I mentioned, and
yeah.
balance is something that I wouldn't say people struggle with, but when we get to the balance portion of the class, I see people frustrated that they can't quite get the balance poses, and they can't compare themselves to me. Of course, I teach yoga, but I
Yeah.
say to them during the commercial breaks, get up and work on a balance pose. When you're brushing your teeth, do some stretches,
Ah,
do some squats, really find ways when you're in the middle of your day doing other normal things, washing dishes. You can get some steps in when you're washing dishes, even if it's a little bit like step aerobics back and forth. There are ways where you're just constantly thinking, or not constantly, but frequently thinking of how can I move and do what I'm doing. And
mhm,
they've even done studies, I thought this was fascinating, of women and men who were involved in housekeeping at a hotel, for instance. And they
mm,
did a study of these people, and those who said, my work is going to be physical exercise for me. It's going to help me stay healthy. It's movement, and it's going to help me lose weight and be healthier. They actually lost more weight and got healthier, as
mm,
opposed to the other group who didn't have that mindset. Now, they, of course, they did a study, so they had the control group, and so even just thinking, this is exercise for me right now, carrying in your groceries, or
mhm,
doing squats with the baby in the front pack. Looking at it differently, just the
hmm.
way we look at things can impact the way our body responds.
Yeah, yeah. You saying that, I envision my cousin. My cousin is a health and fitness enthusiast, I guess would be the proper word for it. But I can picture her right now with the baby Bajorn on, and she's like just standing there doing squats while we're speaking, and I'm like, crazy girl, what are you doing? Stand still for a second. And I always kind of attribute that to just her attention deficit, but really I think she was doing exactly what you're saying. It's just being very mindful and taking those moments of opportunity to knock out some squats in there. And wow, I'm gonna have to call her and apologize for the way I thought of her. Not that I vote like said it. She'll watch this eventually, but not that I said it out loud. But I really did just think like, can you just stand still for a second? Like, but really, that's what she was doing. So that's crazy. I didn't even think about those things. But you're right. Like I remember there would be times where I'm like, all right, I'm really motivated to do 20 squats every hour. If I can stand up at work and just every hour on the hour do 20 squats, then by the end of the day, I would knock out, I don't know, 100 plus 200 squats by the end of the
Right.
day. And so I would start off really strong, but then I never end up really,
Yeah.
really well. So, all right. So, what are some of the most impactful changes or choices that you've made recently to improve your health?
Most impactful choices that I've made to improve my health.
Mhm.
I think that it's so interesting working in the fitness industry
Mm.
during this time, during the pandemic, because you look at things very differently when you're interacting with people who are, maybe have been home for many months and are finally coming back to the gym to get healthy,
Mhm.
or are realizing, that just like you said, we're at home more, we're sitting more, we have more time, and they're realizing, it's time to come back and put myself as a priority. And I think what that taught me, working with my clients, working with the people I work at our local Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, is that it's okay to start again, even if you're someone who has been an athlete your whole life. And it's okay to, maybe mix it up a little bit and do
Mhm.
something different. So, what I've been doing recently is learning from my colleagues, learning from the children I teach yoga to, the adults I teach yoga to. And I had the fortunate opportunity. I had a colleague who traveled recently, and he asked me to come shadow him for a couple of weeks. He's a
Okay.
much more experienced personal trainer than I am. He's got some boxing and karate background. He's got so many skills. So I shadowed him for a couple of weeks, and I've been covering his classes while he's been gone. And so that was putting me out of my comfort zone as well as
Yeah.
an athlete and as a
Mhm.
trainer, because he does, really the hypertrophy, the strength building classes.
Mhm.
So I was learning new skills, and instead of doing the exact same workouts that I would do, I love balance. I love, a lot of squats and curls and just the basic exercises. I was learning completely new ways of exercising,
Mhm.
and because I was teaching these classes, I was
Yeah.
also doing them before I
Mhm.
taught the class. So it was just this whole, at this point in time, maybe I wasn't ready to do something new, but having that opportunity through my colleagues and through my work to learn some new
Yeah.
ways of working out, use them. And then here we are 3 to 4 weeks later, seeing the changes
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
feeling the changes in my body. And it's impressive to me, because you can think you're in shape and then try something different and realize that you had so many other areas that you could gain. So
Mhm.
that has been something that I have done recently for my
Okay.
fitness.
That's
And
great.
in the food department, I'll be honest with you. I think the biggest lesson that I have had during the pandemic when it comes to eating is, especially with our kids. So you have kids as well. So we've
Mhm.
got kids home more often, eating
Mhm.
at home more often,
Yeah.
meals, preparation, all that stuff. I actually had to let go a little bit, because health coach mom raised by a doctor, personal trainer mom,
Mhm.
you can't always be dictating how your kids eat and how the family eats.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I was dictatorial about it, but I have relaxed during the
Yeah.
pandemic and during
Okay.
this at home time. And of course we encourage healthy eating, and we have all of the food groups and healthy foods available to them, but
Mhm.
I've also let them take the reins. We have two teenagers, as you do, and they
Yeah.
need to learn how to eat and eat well on their own, so that it's not dictated to them and it becomes a life habit for them. So that's been my biggest lesson recently
Yeah.
for how to guide my family to be healthier, is just take back the reins a little bit and let it be a little bit more natural of a process for them to choose and
Right.
eat according to who they are, and how
Yeah.
it's healthy, how they know they should be eating.
Yeah, yeah. And I 100% agree with you. I think me being a nurse has really, that's something that I definitely can improve on, is taking back the allowing the kids to just be kids for a little bit. And because I am a pediatric nurse, and so I've seen a lot of crazy things happen, and the children who come to us with these bizarre type injuries based on just the most simplest thing, fractured elbow because they came down the slide, or anything crazy like that. And so anytime the kids would do something, I would always have a hypothetical story to share with them, right? So I'm like, don't do that because this can happen, and
Right.
and so for the longest time, I think my daughter, when she was little, she said, "I want to be a baby nurse just like you." And then over time, she's like, "You have ruined healthcare for me." She says, because I like imposed it on her so much, and all the potential injuries she can have as a result of it. And when she said that to me, it kind of cut me deep. And I realized that I needed to back off a little bit and not always have examples for them anytime they do something that remotely resembles what I've seen with the patient who came in. But I definitely, I hear you on this 100%. I sometimes we don't think, as individuals who are not in the health and fitness industry, how you would operate at home. So I get it. And even now, my husband, sometimes I'll sit there and have a conversation with him, and he'll say, "Don't you comfort kills me with this right now. We're not going there. I don't need a therapist at home living with me." So we'll have those types of conversations, so I can see how, the things we do in our professional lives end up coming home with us and being a part of our conversation just naturally without us even realizing it. So
It's true.
absolutely, 100%. I think that parents out there, this is a great message for all parents, is that, what we do in our personal lives and our professional, or not personal, but professional lives, definitely we have to kind of be very careful with how we bring it home into our family and under our roof. So,
Right. Well, and I think that kids, the way that I've always seen it as learning as people, it's not what we say, it's what we
mhm,
do. And really guiding them by your actions. And that speaks to not only health, fitness, eating, that speaks to how we, live our lives and go out in the world too. It's what we
mhm.
do as opposed to what we say that really teaches
Yeah,
them.
exactly, exactly. All right. So, Heather, tell me, what is the most ideal type of client that you like to see as a health coach? So we'll start there with the health coach piece, and then we'll go into the personal trainer piece. But when you see individuals, a lot of people want to say, "I've got this. There's so many resources on the internet nowadays. I don't need to hire a person to tell me how to live a healthy lifestyle." What is it that you want to provide and put out there to the world, when you find yourself in this situation, or when is it a perfect time for somebody to finally throw in the towel and say, "All right, I need additional assistance from a person like Heather Katz"?
Right. Excellent question. I think that there's no one answer for
Hmm.
every person, but
Hmm.
I think that the time to seek out a health coach is when you realize that there's just not enough hours in the day for you to become the expert on what you need to become an expert in to really get you to that next level or to where you want to be. I have an example of a client, she's also a friend of mine, and she happens to be a teacher. And as we know right now, teaching
Mm,
is so intense for these men and women who are giving the gift of their time to all of our children.
yes.
They are teaching remote, a hybrid, whatever it is that they're doing, it's more time than they've ever had to put into their careers. And we know, I know intimately how much time you put into a teaching job, but also, in the pandemic, it's crazy hours. So she got to the point where she said, I can't do it myself. I just simply can't do everything. I can't be the mom to my kids, the mom to my dog, and be the teacher I want to be and know I need to be to
Hmm.
feel fulfilled. I need some guidance. So she came to me and she said, this is almost embarrassing to me because I was an athlete and I should know how to do this, but
Right.
where do I start? She said, I just where do I start now? And that I think that
Yeah.
often is where we find ourselves, which and this is largely why, I work with all clients, but I do tend to resonate with women and moms because that's where I was and that's how I can relate to to people, but she really was at a point in her life where she just couldn't quite put all the pieces together. And so
Yeah.
she came to me and said, all right, break it down for me. Where should I start?
Yeah.
And, we did that. And, unfortunately, she got busy and I haven't seen her for a little while, but, I know we'll come back around and, go to the next step. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're at the point in your life where there's just too much on your plate, but you know in your heart that for you, you need to do something for your health or for your body or for your mind, then that's the time to get in touch with a coach because
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to say, well, a health coach is just going to work on your diet. We really work holistically. I take a holistic approach, incorporating, whatever is appropriate for my clients, but, some mindfulness, some energy medicine, some aromatherapy, whatever is appropriate for you as a client,
Mm-hmm.
then I can bring that in and help and guide you to kind of examine, all right, what's stopping you from getting there and how can we overcome that and get you to the point where we can help you to reach your healthy eating goals.
So Heather, what about when what's the plan look like? Is there it sounds, I presume that there is a very specialized plan for each person with the way that you're speaking into, like, whatever it is they need, you incorporate it into it. So what's the plan timeline? Is there, is it 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months? How long are you looking at timelines for your individual clients?
Like you said, it is definitely geared towards each individual. And it can also be geared towards what your investment can be of time and of resources. Because, if I have somebody who says, whatever it takes, however long it takes, then
Mm-hmm.
of course I would say minimum 12 weeks,
Okay.
because I really think you need enough time to start to make some changes, see how they're trickling down into your life, into your body, into your mind, into how you're feeling, and then reassess and start a new round of
Mm-hmm.
I say I would hesitate to say changes at that point, but tweaks, ways that we can
Mm.
improve what we're already doing to help you to feel even
Mm-hmm.
better, look even more the way you want to look, get the numbers that you want to have be a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more where they want to be. So that would be probably the ideal is the 3 months. However, if somebody doesn't have that time or those resources, then we would step it back and say, well, let's start where you're at. Let's start with a one session. We'll do a brainstorming session. We'll get everything down on paper and then pick some of the top things in that and get you started on
Mm-hmm.
your own, or you can work with me. So,
Okay.
there's options for every type of person. And I also offer group coaching as well. So if it's something where, you would want to do, with a small group, it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be, a little bit different of a financial investment, also a little bit different, not the one-on-one time, but
Mm-hmm.
it would allow you to reach your goals. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what's so important as a health coach, as a trainer, is meeting people where they're at. I'm not going to come to every single client and say, this is what you need. You've got to sign up for the 6-month program. They're
Mm-hmm.
available to you, but every person is different and everybody's goals are different. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
like to try to work within them.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the physical training part. So what part does that become incorporated into their plan? Or if somebody who wants to come to you and say, I would like to hire you for, XYZ goals, body goals, that image goals that I am trying to reach. How does that incorporate into everything that you do?
Again, it tends to be very tailored. Generally, right
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm working mainly with one-on-one clients, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's very easy to tailor it to their personal goals and what their specific needs are. When I start with clients, we almost always start with, let's do, a month, let's do 3 months. Like, we have a grand plan about how long we're going to work together, because I've been finding that those who have been coming to me as clients are at that point where they're really motivated
Mm-hmm.
and they know that they're ready to make this change, and that's why they're investing in themselves.
Yeah.
So generally we have that timeline that is long enough where I can say, all right, so this is your ABCD goals. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
start here. This is why we're going to start here. So I have a swimmer that I'm working with, and he wanted
Mm.
to improve his swim times.
Uh-huh.
So he needs more explosivity off the dive from his dive into the water and off of the wall when he's doing his slip turns. He needed that explosivity, and he
Uh-huh.
needs more upper body strength and flexibility. So it's very easy to tailor a program to him based
Yeah.
on that, because I know exactly what he wants.
Uh-huh.
Now, I have had clients who come to me and say, I'm not really sure what I
Yeah.
want, but I want to feel this way or want to look this certain way. So then you kind of have to get back and talk about, okay, well, in order to, target your lower abs, lots of women talk about their lower abs. We need to talk not only about your fitness, but also about your diet. And so it's just, it's finding where it is that they want
Okay.
to focus, and choosing that. So, as a coach, the nice thing is that I really can tailor it to each individual client,
Mhm.
and, find what their needs are and base a program off of that.
Okay. Okay. And so now, currently during the pandemic, how are you incorporating one-on-one time with your clients? How is that working out for you?
So the nice thing is that we live in Maine,
Uh-huh.
and living in, and we're not totally rural, but semi-rural Maine during a pandemic hasn't been a bad thing, because we've had very little community spread. And it's wintertime, and after summer, we had lots of travelers come to vacation land, which is what Maine is called. So we
Mhm.
do have more spread going on right now.
Yeah.
But our gyms are still open,
Okay.
and I've been relatively busy at our gym and our fitness center, working with clients and teaching classes. So that's been really nice. During the pandemic, though, however, in terms of the online piece, I have had clients that I've worked with online, because more people are at home and they're looking for that guidance and support. But at the same time, the flip side is, I think the reason the local portion of my business is successful right now is because we spent so many months at home this spring. This summer and fall, people have come back out ready to get back into the gym, to get back into their
Yeah.
routine, and fully embrace the opportunities that they have had
Mhm.
to come back and exercise and get back to where they were, lose that pandemic 15, or gain back the strength that they lost when they were sitting on the couch, and
Yeah.
not really sure what to do during the pandemic. So it's been nice to be able
Good.
to be in that environment, to be in Maine, where we have that ability to still be in
That's
person.
great. That's great. So, Heather, you don't strike me as the person who says, if you can't afford me, don't bother. I feel like you would be still very open about the different types of resources that may be out there for people to just look into on their own if they can't afford your help or are just not in the right financial state at this point. So if somebody came to you and said, "Listen, I need to do something about my weight. I don't feel good about myself. It's making me incredibly insecure. I'm depressed." What are some resources that you would guide them to, just to say, "Here, why don't you check out this, this, and this?" And maybe there's some information there that could help you.
Absolutely. Well, I would say for anyone like that, it doesn't have to be with me, but I would start with, I offer initial consultations that are complimentary. So
Mhm.
start there, because I tend to be a talker, as you can tell. So
Mhm.
it's, 20 minutes might become 30 minutes on the phone, and we can cover a lot of ground. As
Yeah.
long as we're focused on what we're talking about, we can cover a lot of ground in 30 minutes and get you to a point where that you've got some goals and you've got a starting point and some resources to use.
Mhm.
And during those initial consultations, I'm happy to use whatever knowledge and resources I have, send
Yeah.
them via email something that might be specific to a health concern that they have, or
Uh-huh.
a fitness related question that they have. I also think that, and we talked about, the internet and fad diets, and how there might be too much information, or we might learn about things that aren't the best for us. But at the same time, there is so much out there that is excellent, high quality information, be it about healthy eating, a balanced diet, or about fitness. I always joke with my colleagues, because
Mhm.
really, if you want to learn anything, because of course I have the personal training certification, which was months of preparation and
Yeah.
lots of reading. I mean, you finished your doctorate, you know what it's like. This is nothing like a doctorate, but it is a very comprehensive
Right. Yeah.
process of learning how to support people as they exercise.
Mhm.
But when I go back to my notes and my resources, I then go to YouTube and I have certain trainers that I like, and if I need to review how
Mm,
to do a certain exercise, there is so much out there. There
yeah,
are entire yoga classes. When
yeah,
I need new ideas, I go to the internet to find them, and I know just from experience, what are good resources and what are not. But there's
mm,
a lot of information out there that can help you. And I can start and be the guide during that
yeah,
initial consultation and say, here's my starting point that I'd recommend. But use the resources that are out there. We have everything on the
yeah,
internet, literally. And
yeah, yeah.
if you want it, you can find it.
Of course, absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Um, so when this airs, it's going to be after the holidays, but I think a lot of times it's great helpful tips to really even touch on it because even though it's after the holidays, this will be airing shortly before or right around Valentine's Day, where we're consumed with sweets and chocolate and everything's just all the good stuff is still around us. It's like Halloween all over again when Valentine's come around. So, what are some of the advice that you have for people who have now started seeing some progress? They're 2 weeks in, they're 21 days in, and then the holidays, some sort of holiday comes around and they're just overwhelmed with the variety of sweet choices around them. So, what would you say to them to help them stay on track and still be able to enjoy the occasion?
Absolutely. Well, I think starting with the enjoying the occasion is so important,
Mhm.
Jasmine, because I don't believe in cutting anything out of your diet.
Okay.
And I think it's very important to eat dessert and maintain that happiness that we feel when we have favorites. I mean, if I were to cut out dark chocolate, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be a happy person because to me that's enjoyment, and that's something that, I mean, I know it's healthy for me too, but that's enjoyment. I eat dessert every day and I encourage everybody to do that, but it's all about, in my eyes, really that balance. So it can be, maybe you're a portion control person. Maybe you're a consistency person. You're very consistent in, how you approach what you eat on a daily basis. Maybe you're somebody who, occasionally likes to overindulge and then take a step back and the next day, eat very lightly. There are so many ways that we can approach it, but I think that find a way that works for you.
Mhm.
And I encourage people just not to over limit and feel guilty, because the way we look at how we eat
Yeah.
and the way we look at how we exercise and the way we look at how um, that impacts us really does matter. I mean, it's back to the mindfulness, the energy that we
Right.
put into what
Yeah.
we're eating. They they did a study on people, and it happened to incorporate Steve Jobs, and they talked about how Steve Jobs, he wore the same outfit every day,
Mhm.
black turtleneck, jeans, and maybe a sport coat, depending on the situation.
Mhm.
And there's a reason for that, because the simplicity of that choice allowed him to focus on other things. And obviously, he was a brilliant mind, and so he focused on many, many other things.
Mm.
So that connects back to me and my thinking when it comes to eating. It's okay to be simple in how you approach your eating.
Mhm.
So you can have a basic lunch that you eat, a basic breakfast that you eat, and then you maybe tweak it. You add a different fruit, or you add a different condiment, or you add a different bread if you're a
Mhm.
sandwich eater. But keeping things simple in that respect gives us the ability to not have to worry about like all the details. It doesn't have to be, a fancy dinner every single night. It can be more simple. It can be chicken and potatoes, but maybe it's
Mhm.
sweet potatoes one night, and maybe it's chicken with capers one night, and then the next night it's with tomatoes. And so I am just encouraging, like that again, going back to that simplicity, that basics. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy and over
Mhm.
the top. Keep it simple so that you can, stay within your parameters of what you want to be, as in terms of where you're at for healthy eating, in terms of where you're
Yeah.
at for exercising, and kind of have that baseline consistency that you can go back to. Have the cake, have the cookies,
Mhm.
have the ice cream, have, whatever it is you indulge in, but then come back to that consistency, kind of your home base,
Yeah.
and use that as, for me, if we're talking about comfort, as comfort kills, comfort can also just be the basics that
Yeah.
we look to in our lives, and that can help when, the schedule is out of line because of the holidays. And that always helps me, is to just come back to basics. All right, I'm going to
Hmm.
have that turkey sandwich again today because that's basic and that's my baseline, and that makes me
Yeah.
feel good, and it can kind of get me back to my homeostasis.
Hmm. Hmm. Great advice. I think overindulgence is what we tend to do, and so just knowing and being very mindful of what we're consuming.
Absolutely.
All right. So, um, if you had a billboard, what would it say?
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
That's quite a question. I think the billboard, so a little bit of background on my health coaching. I became a family health coach.
Uh-huh.
And that's partly because of my elementary school background. I really wanted to be able to work with families. So I think that it all starts at home, really, when it comes to, where we build our foundation for our families. And mom is my number one job. So that's it. That's really, part of who I am.
Hmm.
So I think that the billboard would have to be focused on something like that. And it would go along the lines of, it would probably have a picture of, a healthy, happy family,
Yeah.
outside playing together. And it would say something like, take back your health
Yeah.
in simple steps. So just a very clear, like, make it happy, make it fun, but let's keep
Hmm.
it simple, and let's keep it doable, because that's kind of my business motto is, I'm going
Yeah.
to help you take back your health, but I'm going to make it doable, simple, and fun.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, Heather. Every time I've asked that question, I've never gotten a visual. So you're the first to give me an actual visual background plus the phrase that you wanted to put out there. So I really appreciate that. And I like that, again, back to basics. So really just keeping it as simple as possible and don't overcomplicate it. And I think a lot of times we have the tendency to do that is have this really big grand scheme, but not realizing that you can take baby steps to get there. It doesn't have to happen
Absolutely.
all on January 1st
It's
on
so true.
on New Year's resolution day. So for sure.
It's
All
so
right.
true.
So sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So what is it that I should have asked you that I didn't know to ask you? What are some last minute things that you would love to discuss?
You don't know what you don't know. These are some excellent questions.
Thank you.
I've done a number of interviews, and it's
Yeah.
rare that I have to sit and think about an answer. I think that when it comes to finding a path to health,
Hmm.
we don't always know what the backstory is.
Mm.
And when I'm sitting with a client, I always know that there's a backstory
Yeah.
on their lives. And I know there's a backstory on your life, and there's a backstory on my life.
Hmm.
And I think that it's those backstories that really make us who we are
Hmm.
and help us define how we're going to get to where we want to go, and if we're going to get to where we want to go.
Yeah.
So for me, the backstory, and what hopefully makes me relatable as a health coach and as a personal trainer, is that, if we rewind over 20 years. And now you and I were talking before the interview about our sons. We both have sons that are seniors in high school.
Mm-hmm.
My son just got into his first choice college, which
Yes.
happens to be my alma mater, which is
Yay.
extremely exciting. But
Yeah.
I said to my husband last night, I said, if I could do it all over again, I'd go back and I'd start at that exact same college as
Uh-huh.
an 18-year-old, because I know that was the right choice. And then the
Uh-huh.
conversation was, would you really do it again? And would you go back knowing what you know now, or would you start like you were at
Hmm.
age 18? And I said, well, you couldn't do it knowing what you know now. It wouldn't work, because you'd have all the answers. You'd have the answers, and you'd know the path.
Hmm.
So I guess the reason for that story is, if I go back to, that 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old girl that I
Yeah.
was, that is the backstory for Heather Katz as a health coach and a
Uh-huh.
personal trainer.
Okay.
I was a competitive runner who found that that was my sport. I didn't know I played soccer for years. I didn't know I was a good competitive runner. So that became my sport.
Hmm.
But the backstory of that is that that any competitive athlete who really gets involved in a sport, especially running, can sometimes run into some bumps in the road, shall we say. So
Mhm.
I had some bumps in the road with a little bit of disordered eating. I had some bumps in the road with some injuries. And as an adult, I can look back on those bumps in the road and say those were somewhat defining moments for me,
Mhm.
because I had to, at a certain point as an athlete, decide I'm not going to let these bumps define me. I'm going to rise above them and,
Mhm.
really become who I am as a person because of them, because I learned through them. So that's part of the backstory of me as a person. I have I have a history that, may not be the most beautiful one when it comes to how did I get to be a health coach. I haven't always had perfect eating habits. I haven't always had perfect exercise habits. I
Mhm.
haven't always been, the perfect mom doing exactly what I should do for my kids. But the backstory has guided me to be who I am now, coming to you as a
Yeah.
health coach. So I have that relatability and that ability to,
Mhm.
see the struggle that you might be facing as somebody who needs to work or wants to work with a health coach,
Mhm.
and identify with it because, A, I've had that injury. B, I've struggled with eating. C, I know what it's like to be a busy mom and not be able to fit it in. Those are some of the examples of ways that, that I can connect with clients and offer
Mhm.
that relatability.
Okay. Okay, great. Great. And I think that's really important. And I think a lot of times people too, they will say to me, even during the interview process for Comfort Kills, is that being able to break down that barrier and connect right off the bat really makes it so much easier to have conversations. So when I had one special guest who came on and to represent a group of disabled individuals, that was one of the things she said. Like her entire life was just really walking into a room and knowing all eyes were on her. And so she already had this pre-notion that, people are thinking something or they want to say something or ask something and they're not. And so she cannot never connect with them as authentically as she would like to. And so she said being able to just break down those barriers and connect on a different type of level was what was most helpful for her as a person with disability. So here I am hearing it in a different kind of way from a life coach perspective and saying that, you are able to connect with your clients, knowing that there's a backstory, understanding what their backstory is to help them get to what their goal is. So that's great. That's great information for those who are curious.
I just think that in this day and age, and like I said, we both have kids, both have
Yeah.
teenagers. We watch social media. There are social media influencers, fitness influencers, people who what they project
Hmm.
is amazing. And
Yeah.
we want that. As a trainer, I might want that. I might want to look like that or be like that, or
Yeah.
wish I had been a fitness model when I was in my 20s, all of those things. But it really comes back to what's underneath that matters, and
Mm.
that's how we connect with people, is
Yeah.
getting through to that, and
Exactly.
being real in that
Exactly.
respect.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Heather, well, if our Comfort Kill followers would like to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think there's lots of ways to do that, but I would start, if you're a social media person, of course
Hmm.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and my business name is Balanced Wellness Within.
Okay.
So you can find me, Facebook.com/Balance Wellness Within, and same thing on Instagram. I'm
Uh-huh.
also on LinkedIn. And then when it comes to my website, very simple. It's Balanced Wellness
Uh-huh.
Within.com. Maybe we should do
Okay.
that again, huh?
Sure, sure. Let's do that again.
Okay.
So Heather, if Comfort Kill followers would love to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, there are lots of places to find me. Of course, we all have social media platforms where we can be connecting with all of our clients. So you can find me on Facebook, and my business name is Balance Wellness Within. So that's what it's called right there on Facebook. I actually also have a group that you can join as well
Hmm.
if you're looking for a little bit more of the, the intimate connection, smaller focus, a group of like-minded people.
Hmm.
On Instagram, Balance Wellness Within as well.
Okay.
And I am at balancedwellnesswithin.com. So
Okay.
those are ways to get in touch with me. And again, like I mentioned before, there's a free consultation. I've got a free ebook. There's ways to
Okay.
kind of start to see what I have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
offer you. And just kind of as a side note, we talked about ways to get started, free resources for people.
Hmm.
All during the beginning of the pandemic on my Balanced Wellness Within Facebook page, I
Hmm.
did 3 workouts a week. So there's a whole
Okay.
library of
Yeah.
workouts that were at home using dumbbells if you had them, milk jugs if you didn't. So
Yeah.
people can start there if they're just looking for a way to work out. And they were all pretty much, less than 15 minutes. So easy
Okay.
to do right at home. Sometimes the kids were right involved with me. So
Great.
that's a good place to start.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that if anybody in our audience resonates with what you've said today and they're curious and they would like to find you, there's many different platforms, but they can also be a fly in the wall in your Facebook group and viewing your different social media platforms to just look for those free resources and see if they really enjoy. And then maybe if it's not now, perhaps after they've kind of looked through or fly on the wall for a little while and realize that yes, this is a good connection, then they can reach out to you as well. So that's great. Thank you. And of course, all this information will always be on our website as well. So if you go to comfortkillsmedia.com, just look for Heather's beautiful face and you'll be able to click on that and you'll see on her picture under special guests, you'll see the different links as well for all of these sources. So great. Well, thank you so much, Heather, today for your time. I've had a really great time and I really appreciate what you've done for the community as a teacher and now as a life coach, and just really giving back to the community, working at the YMCA and doing things for people to help them really just find their better selves. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to interview, Jasmine. It's been wonderful. And I think that interviews not only are a great way to share who we are with the world, but I always learn something about myself. And
Yeah.
like I said, your questions at the end really helped me to learn. And it goes back to the title of your podcast, Comfort Kills, because if I was
Mhm.
comfortable in the interviews and I knew all the answers, then it wouldn't really be
Exactly.
as great of an experience for both of us. So thank you for that.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Great.